I'll now call order the January 28, 2014 Board of Supervisors meeting to order. We have Pastor Henry Davis here from Fellowship Baptist Church to do our invocation. I'll ask everyone to stand and remain standing for the pledge.
Let us pray. Father, we're so grateful to be here. And there's a lot of countries that do not enjoy the government processes that we do, and we don't want to take that for granted. I'm thankful to live in Wythe County. I'm thankful for what you've done in this place. Lord God, I pray that you would be with these men. I thank you for each and every one of them. Lord, I appreciate that we can come before them, Lord, and help in the governing process. I pray that you'd bless them. I pray that you would bless their families and their pursuits. Lord God, I pray that we would continue to strive to be a body of people, Lord, that does not just strive for intelligence, but that we strive for wisdom, that we might fulfill the goals that are most important, Lord, that being that we please you and that we do what's best for the people of Wythe County. And God, I believe that each man here is dedicated to those propositions. And Father, I pray that you'd help them as they pursue that goal. And Lord, we're grateful to be here today. Father, I pray that everything that is done and said in this meeting this morning would be productive and profitable, and that we would leave here with a new sense of gratitude for the great country in which we live. And so we give this time to you and ask that you bless it. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, we ask these things. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, I'd like to welcome everyone this morning. First order on the agenda is citizens' time. And we have one person signed up for citizen time, Ms. Myers.
Good morning, gentlemen. I have a question in regard to the impact study for the Expo, the Livestock Expo Center. What was the delinquencies in that program, or in the last report, that we couldn't use it and we have to expend more money for another one? What didn't it have in that report? Why do you think we need another one? It's only been 5 years. Have things changed monumentally here in 5 years that you don't think it's feasible now? Why do you need another one and spend $15,000?
Well, the time is, it's been 5 years since we had a study.
Right, I've been here the whole time.
Things may have changed. That's one thing that we want to make sure.
But what's the may have changed? We have an increased population.
We want to make sure that we know the correct figures before the county moves forward, before we may put taxpayers' money, into this. We want to make sure that the numbers is there to support this.
Well, the Farm Bureau and so on, they can't give you these figures? I mean, somebody can't call the livestock auction places. Their increased sales are good. It's been continuous. There have been no changes. The horse clubs that are in the area have big attendance, and that's been a big continued push. When you have car shows here, that we have more people than we've had before. Everything seems to be on the rise for that kind of, let's say, industry. And it just seems viable, and to go out and spend $15,000 on a study that we may already have in hand, it just seems a little redundant. If you could turn around and make a few phone calls.
Would anybody else like to address?
I mean, one thing that may have changed would be the legislation that's passed with the liquor by the drink. And I think when you look at the economic impact study, you've got to look not only at the agricultural, but what other economic factors are going to be impacted by having that there. And so that would be something that's
well,
changed.
It would only be a positive change,
years.
certainly not a negative change.
Right, but again, you've got to quantify it. And so that's what this study would do. That's what I would think is the major significant change in 5 years.
I'm just wondering if somebody just didn't need another job, and that's really unfortunate for the taxpayers to be paying for that when we couldn't use the...
Mr. Hill.
Ms. Myers, from time to time, a lot of time, you're here wanting us to practice good business practices.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
And this is good business practice. You wouldn't venture your money
you wouldn't want us to venture county support or money without having good business practices. This is not only a roadmap, it's a little bit of history, what we can expect, and at that time we'll decide whether it's a viable project or not. The dated material, the site is different, totally different. So that certainly impacts off-site development costs and site development costs. The traffic pattern has obviously changed a bit, and also the decision has been made by the state Commonwealth Transportation Board that that's going to be the corridor for many, many years to come. These things were up in air 5 years ago and didn't have a definitive answer.
But you have all those other studies now that are available, the traffic study and the traffic patterns and so on, so you could
But it needs to be brought together on focus on one economic enterprise, and that's where the good business practices comes in.
Okay. My answer. I was looking at the budget worksheet of January 16th, and in there, of course, on the reverse page is the huge expenditures for Progress Park again and the joint IDA. And I'm a firm believer that the purpose of government, or the existence, is to provide the services and protections to the people which they cannot reasonably provide for themselves, which is police and courts and roads. It just seems that we are putting a great deal of taxpayers' money into sinking that into the joint IDA and the Progress Park. I don't think the county should be in the land development business, especially in these economic times. I don't see any big things happening. Everything seems to be going in the other directions. I think you need to work to continue to confine yourselves to as much of a limited budget as possible. And I realize that you're talking about a 1.5% increase in the forthcoming budget, but household incomes have not gone up. In fact, they are going down. We've just lost jobs in rural retreat and so on. So I think it's really imperative that you conserve, work to bring down our debt and to adhere to limited government. In land development, are you really acting? I think you're acting outside the parameters of which the government was intended. Okay, thank you.
No one else has signed up. Would anybody else like to speak? Citizens' time. Seeing no one else, I'll close citizen time. The next order of business on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting of January the 14th, 2014.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I have a second.
I'll second it.
Have a second. Any discussion, any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hear none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Hausman?
Aye.
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 And aye. Minutes are approved. Next order of business on the agenda is the payment of invoices. I have a motion.
I'll make a motion that we pay the invoices as presented.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any invoice anyone would like to discuss? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
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 And the chair votes aye. Invoices be paid. Next order of business on the agenda is reports. We had the fiscal year 13 financial statement. Mr. Stone from Robson, Farmer and Cox and Associates.
We got a handout for you. We'll kind of work our way through it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Kind of probably the first order of business. First, thanks for having me here today. the audit went extremely well this year. I think what we saw this year was Bruce has got a very good handle. He's been here long enough. He's got a very good handle on the financials. He's got his monthly reconciliations down very well, and we were just very pleased with how the county audit came together this year and how the financial statements came together. And Bruce has put in a lot of work with the financial systems you have in place. It really requires somebody with a good accounting background, good finance background, to pull all the pieces together, because you've got multiple systems out there, and he is doing a great job of reconciling those. So, like I said, we couldn't be happier with the way the audit went this year. Very pleased. The county received an unmodified opinion, I should say. The terminology's changed this year, which is the highest possible. So, again, it shows to the county's work that they're keeping good books. I'll kind of go through the audit presentation, and we'll start on page 1 to give you a little bit of background about where the county's been and kind of where they are today, or at the end of 2013. At the top on page 1, you'll see governmental funds, and those are your general fund and your capital projects funds. Ended the year at $36 million. That was down from $45 million the prior year, and that's that first series of numbers up there that's underlined. $45 million the prior year, $47 before that. So it was down, but we actually it was actually because of some of the capital projects funds were spent with the completion of the social services building and that sort of thing. At the end of the day, your unrestricted funds actually increased. So overall, you were down, but unrestricted. So those that are available to fund anything for the government actually increased to about $32 million at the end of the year, up from $29 million in the prior year. Total general governmental debt stood at $37 million, and we're going to see a graph in just a second that then plots those two items against each other. The enterprise fund at the end of the year, which is water and sewer, ended the year with $29 million in net assets, and our net position. And when we say net position, what we're saying there are total assets of the system minus total liabilities of the system. So it was an increase from the prior year. At the end of the prior year, you're at $26 million. This year, you ended the year with just under $29.5 million in net position. Long-term debt for the enterprise fund is down. You had an early redemption of some debt this past year. So long-term debt of the enterprise fund dropped from $25 million to $21 million at the end of the year. Overall debt for the county is down about $9 million from the prior year. Again, you had some early retirements of debt, and I think it was a good use of county funds. Dropped down to $59 million at the end of the year, and that gives you debt per capita right at $2,000, which is in line with what we see for counties around the state. The last averages we have go back to 2010, and the state at that point in time had a weighted average of $2,694, and when you have the weighted average, that means the more urban counties are going to be weighted a little bit higher. The unweighted average was $2,078 for the state average for debt per capita. So the county is right there at those state averages for debt per capita. The next page graphs out that general fund balance against the long-term debt. And what you can see, and I really like the closer these two things are together, the better off you are. And you can see they're as close together in 2013 as they've been in the past 8 years. So when we look at unrestricted funds, the funds you have available if you wanted to pay down that debt are almost as much as your outstanding debt for governmental funds, which is pretty good. We usually don't see it that close together. But that's a strong, good indicator that you're in good financial shape. The net assets for the enterprise fund, water and sewer, again, have just steadily increased. Now, of course, on water and sewer, when you buy a capital asset, you put it into service and you start depreciating it. So what this means is you're kind of adding to your system. You're growing the system. The next line we look at your revenues looking back the next graph, we look at your revenues looking back 8 years, and I'm on page 4. and we just chart out what are your primary revenue sources. Well, general property taxes are that top line, and you can see you've had pretty good growth. You can see that reassessment year that would have been in 2008. But even between reassessment years, you get pretty good growth, or decent growth, I should say, in those collections. The next line down are your other local taxes. You can kind of see we started to drop off in 2009, really part of the recession, and then we can start to see a little bit of a comeback in 2012, 2013. We kind of dipped just a little bit in those other local taxes, which are going to be sales tax, meals tax, things like that. But you can see that second line down. The next line down, I'll say the purple line, are going to be your grants from the Commonwealth, and that includes capital. Categorical aid, that's for some specific purpose, including capital. You get a spike if you get a governor's opportunity grant or something of that nature. But the line we really want to focus in on is that little green line, because those are essentially the Commonwealth's share of your operating cost, if you will. They're shared expenses to cover the commissioner's office, the treasurer's office, sheriff's office, and then also the taxes that they share with you. And you can look at that green line and see that it's pretty much flat for 8 years now. It's just been a straight line across. The next page gives you your functional expenditures by category. And on that prior page, what that also tells you is that your state, or your share of state taxes that are being passed along and shared expenses, since that's flat, that means any sort of increase you have on the expenditure side really gets funded with local dollars. And that's typically what we're seeing around the state. We can look back 10 years of how much your budget was funded with state dollars, and look today, and that percentage has dropped. So increasingly, we're relying on local dollars to fund any sort of increases we have on the expenditure side. The next graph shows your functional expenditures by year. And the top line is education. You've had some increases in education contributions from the local government to the school board. This is a little misleading. When we look at the school board side, you'll see it's not as large a number in their budget as you might think. But from 2011 to 2013, we've had increases in contribution to education. The next line down, kind of the bluish line, if you will, those are your costs for health and welfare, which actually dropped off a little bit in 2013. And then the next line down from that, that's going to be public safety. And we had some capital items, I believe, in 2011 that caused that spike. And really, those are your three areas where most of your costs are being incurred. The other areas you can see at the bottom are pretty much flat over this look-back period of 8 years, or very moderate or minor increases. Your tax assessments by fiscal year, and I can tell you, I look at this graph for a lot of counties, and nobody else's looks just like Wythe counties. I'll tell you that. Primarily because those machinery and tools taxes were assessed back in 2005 at under $100 million. And you can see in 2010, that purple line, you're up to $200 million. So the growth in machinery and tools tax, we don't have this kind of line in any other locality that I work with. So it's a pretty impressive growth there. You've also had strong growth in real estate, and again, the assessments are maintaining. They're not, in other places we're seeing a dip off, and you may have that when you go through reassessment, but you can see you had growth between reassessment. And in a lot of places we're seeing that just flat, essentially no new construction. Personal property, which is the top line, you have a drop in 2010, and that was because they came out with a new way of valuing vehicles, or NADA, NADA, came out with a different valuation methodology in 2010, and it dropped the value of vehicles, so your personal property assessments went down. They're back up in 2013 to where they were in the year prior to that change, 2009. I will tell you that real estate on this graph is shown at 1/10 of the actual assessed value. Because if we do it at 100% of the assessed value, we got one line at the top and then a bunch of lines clustered at the bottom. So we do it at 1/10 so we can get them all on the same graph. The next page, page 7, gives you an idea of what the school boards have been dealing with around the state. The top line is revenue from the Commonwealth, from the state, and we peaked out in 2009, and then we took a pretty serious drop between 2009 and 2011. The third line down, kind of the blue line, those are your federal dollars coming in, and they were flat from 2006 to 2009. We got a spike up in 2010. That was stimulus money, ARA money coming in. Then we still had some of that in 2011 and a little bit in 2012, and now we're back to the federal funding are just the normal programs. No stimulus money is left at this point. And you can see that those federal dollars have actually dropped below in 2013 where they were prior to the recession. So that's dropping down. Your state money is starting to come back up, though. And really, to fill the void, that second line down, you had to use local money. Like I said, on the prior graph that showed those expenditures for education going up pretty steeply, you can see when you look at their budget, it doesn't have the impact that it does when you're looking back at yours. The next couple pages are the management comments from the audit. And like I said, overall the audit went well. I'm not going to go through each one of these. I know the county's working on them. The biggest one is to try to find a system, and we've talked about that on a couple of occasions, try to find an accounting system that merges everything together. It'll keep Bruce from spending quite a bit of his time trying to reconcile all these various systems. And a good analogy is if I kept my family's checkbook and my wife kept it and one of my kids kept it, also I all tried to keep up with it, and we had $50–60 million running through it. To try to reconcile everybody's work together would be pretty difficult. And that's what you've got here. You've got 3 different sets of books, and then Bruce has the daunting task of trying to pull all those together at the end of every month. But that's really the biggest comment. A lot of the other ones are not that significant. I won't go through them unless you see one you would like to discuss. And some of the social services comments really dealt with changes at the state. They ask us to look at different things this year. They give us a list of things they want us to look at. And anytime you have a change up, you wind up having a comment or two. The final 2 pages, it's a letter we're required to give you. And one of the governments I work with called it the scolding letter. If for some reason your folks don't respond when we make inquiries of them, they don't provide us information, they hide things from us, we report it to you in this letter. We have to give you this letter no matter what. But you're going to go through and see that it says we didn't encounter any difficulties in performing the audit. So I'm not going to go through it because we don't have anything in there to discuss. We didn't have any of those issues. Everybody was up front. We didn't have any problems getting information. So like I said at the beginning, the audit went very well. I couldn't be more pleased this year. So I'll stop there and try to take any questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Stone, for your
work you've done. Is anybody on the board who read it?
First of all, once again, I like.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the chart. On page 2, the general government fund balance and debt, and on page 21 of your of the audit report that we had, is there a difference between unrestricted funds and unassigned funds?
Not really. There was a change in terminology last year. Unassigned means that this board hasn't set them aside for any specific reason. Unrestricted, unrestricted is a third party set them aside. So a restricted fund is a third party, say you get a grant in advance.
Right, I understand that.
Unassigned is you can assign that we're going to use $2 million for this project, but then you can unassign that, so you can take it back. Does that make sense?
On page 4 of your bar graph, is the amount for unrestricted funds equal to the amount of unassigned?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
The only other thing, Mr. Chairman, I like to thank Mr. Grant for the work that he's done to give us the non-qualified audit report. Those worked really hard to do that. We Also, I'd like to thank Mr. Dalton for last year for especially coming up with the idea about paying off some of those debts, because I think that we can see a real improvement here in our debt ratio. So I just wanted to do that.
I agree too. Thank you, Bruce, for all the hard work you've done. Does anybody else on the board have any questions for Mr. Stone? Mr. Dalton?
Before Mr. Stone leaves, if you have any questions, the board officially needs to accept the FY
Right.
13 audit.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we accept the audit as presented by Mr. Stone.
I have a second.
I'll second it.
I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Hausman?
Aye.
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 And the chair votes aye. Passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Thanks for having me. I think my contact information, if anybody has any questions, is on the front of that, the handout. So please don't hesitate to call or send me an email.
Thank you. Okay, moving on down the agenda, we have update from AEP. Mr. Poff. Good morning. Glad to see you.
Appreciate the opportunity to come before this board this morning. My name is Ron Poff. I am a senior consultant to AEP. Some of you may remember me from several years ago. I was at one time a senior project manager at AEP, and they called me back out of retirement to help out with some projects, specialty projects, and one of them that I was assigned as a project here in Wythe County. It's a $100 million enhancement or expansion of the transmission system here in Wythe County. And I have a few notes here that I'll kind of guide the presentation, but if question occurs to you as we go through the discussion here this morning, don't hesitate to interrupt me. But basically what I wanted to talk about this morning, let me also, before I jump in, John Edwards is with me this morning. John Edwards is our senior engineer on the line design. So I figured I'd better be somebody that could answer the technical questions and those kinds of issues in the event somebody might have something they've heard from their constituency. And Mary Begley was here earlier. She's making an attempt to be at two places at the same time, so I offer up the apologies for Mary having to bug out and head to another meeting across the state here. But basically, I wanted to give you a little bit of a description of the project, and then, kind of talk about the current status of where we're at, and then, how things are going to go forward, and then, open up for questions or any discussions. But basically, as I indicated, the project entails construction of new 138 kV, 138,000 volt lines. I talk in the kV vernacular, but indicating 1,000, so it's 138,000 volt lines, similar to the line that you see going into the existing Wythe station, just here on the edge of town. And it's the associated substation expansions at Jackson's Ferry, at Wythe Station, at Progress Park Station. We'll see fairly substantial expansions to accommodate these new wires. And this project basically is being driven to ensure continued reliable service for the customers here in Wythe County and the adjoining counties, Carroll, Grayson, and Smith counties. AEP and PJM, in their planning studies back a couple of years ago, identified the reality that by 2015, without this expansion or enhancement, that continued reliable service to approximately 62,000 customers in this region would be in jeopardy and would be approaching unacceptable voltage deviations unless this system is put in place. So we're basically working towards the end of 2015 to get this thing in service. Now, a little bit, the next page here is a little bit of a description of what the project entails, what's going to be involved here. Basically, Appalachian proposes connecting the stations with a new double circuit transmission line. and I have a map later on that can kind of show you that, but it's a little bit of an interesting concept, the way this line evolved and in its installation. We will be on double circuit towers from our Jackson's Ferry station down near Foster Falls up to the point in which we come to the Progress Park station. At that point, one of the circuits on one side of the tower will drop off into Progress Park, and the other circuit will continue on somewhat along the railroad alignment and will drop off into Wythe Station. The line will be approximately 18 miles long, basically consisting of 3 different types, and there's some pictures on the overhead there to show you. You can see the lattice double circuit tower, and then the majority of the single circuit will be an H-frame structure, and then there will be some intermediate uses of single pole structures as we go, through the community here to get to our endpoints. Average 120-foot tall, residing on a 100-foot wide right-of-way. Very typical of 138 kV that's been in service in this part of the country. My recollection of hearing some numbers as far back as the 30s and 40s, so very, very typical. Basically, the current status of the project from a legal perspective, Appalachian filed an application, as you may remember, with the Virginia State Corporation Commission in November of 2012. We went through a series of public hearings, evidentiary hearings, interrogatories from staff and interested parties, and basically completed our due diligence process through that state SCC process oversight. And the SCC issued a final order on October the 10th, 2013, essentially authorizing AEP to proceed with the construction of the project along the preferred corridor. And the next slide shows you that approved corridor. You may remember it was about a little over a year ago we came in and made a presentation about, and introduced you to the project, and there was another alternative corridor that was made available for the Commission's consideration. But after weighing all the information and the facts, and the staff spent quite a bit of time in Wythe County looking at the pros and cons of one versus the other, they ultimately made the decision to authorize us to build the approved or preferred corridor. Okay, as we go forward, we're as soon as we got the order in October, we immediately proceeded to move forward with the project. We've hired a number of resources, appraisal firms, surveying firms, engineering firms, to move forward on this thing. And we basically began contacting property owners. If my memory serves me right, we're looking at about 60-some property owners involved in the project over the course of the entire line land. And we began contacting those property owners along the preferred corridor seeking permission to survey. And I'm happy to report today that we have essentially gotten voluntary permission from every property owner on the project. As you well recognize, with an SCC certificate, the company has the right of eminent domain under these cases, and in that event we would not get a voluntary cooperation. We would have to seek court oversight for right of entry. And so, but I'm happy to report so far we've worked with every property owner to this point and are working with them as we speak, and everything at this point is a voluntary basis. So that's good news from my perspective. To date, as I indicated on bullet 2, we've gotten a good response out of the property owners. It's not to say, and I don't want to get up here and misrepresent this project, that we were embraced. There were a number of people, as you can well imagine, that did not want the power line going across their property, but I think by and large our goal was to try to achieve a reasonable, acceptable, balance in that situation. We are in the process of field surveys, have been doing it since the latter part of last year. We have a preliminary line design. Locating of construction access roads is ongoing, and conducting appraisals on the proposed properties or the easements. You may or may not be aware of this, but just several years ago, the Virginia legislator modified some of the eminent domain statutes, which requires that any valuation of $10,000 or above, you have to provide an independent appraisal to the property owner before you begin negotiations. And as you can well imagine, on a 100-foot wide transmission right-of-way, there aren't many parcels that are going to be under 10,000. So the John McCracken firm out of North Carolina that we've used before has been very aggressively getting out there doing appraisals on the property, and we will provide those documents to each individual property owner as we start negotiations for the easement acquisitions. And based upon my current read back from the right-of-way group, we're probably looking at a process that will start literally this quarter. The fact is that I think their goal is to literally get started in February, sitting down with some of their property owners negotiating. And as we go forward, APCO will finalize the line design. They will place orders for the tower steel, poles, hardware, conductor, the first quarter. In fact, as I think John had indicated, they want to get some towers released to the fabricators here literally within the next 30 to 60 days. And it looks to be very feasible, given where we're at working with the property owners and the current status of the line design. And like I indicated before, acquisition starting under easements in the first quarter. Grading of the line construction access roads will start late this summer, or late spring or early summer. In point of fact, if you're out in the Jackson's Ferry area, you'll probably see some land disturbance already starting. There's some lines that go out of the existing station that have to be shifted to accommodate the new line coming out of the 138,000 volt station there at Jackson's Ferry. And there will be some construction activity at Wythe Station. One of the things, not to get too far in the weeds on this thing, but one of the things we have to really look out for in this kind of project is outage opportunities. We have a PJM organization that basically manages and controls what circuits you can take out when on the grid to ensure that you don't impact or jeopardize the reliability of service in other locations. And we have a couple of windows of opportunity here this spring at Jackson's Ferry and here at Wythe Station that we'll have to take advantage of to adjust the old lines over to accommodate the new line coming in. So you'll see those kinds of activities here pretty soon. Full-blown construction, we're looking at the end of 14 throughout the entire year 15. So, we're somewhat busy right now, but we will really get busy on the project. We'll have a lot of activity out there in the public domain coming next year. Also, one thing I don't have on my bullet on here that just occurs to me, we will be moving in the large power transformers that will arrive by rail. They're all European-built transformers, European or Asian. They will be arriving by rail in the Max Meadows rail yard, and we will be conveying those pieces of equipment, which are huge pieces of equipment. You're looking at a transformer for this project. There will be 5 transformers, 1 for the bank that interconnects with Duke Power, and 4 that will provide the transmission from 765 down to 138 on the upper end of the yard. They will start arriving this fall. And I've been working fairly closely with VDOT and those folks, and also with Mr. Dalton here on trying to develop an acceptable route. This transformer is going to come in at somewhere around 350,000 pounds, just the transformer itself. The rig to haul it is going to be another 150,000 pounds. So you can see, the challenges are going to be there to get across the various bridge structures and things like that. So it requires a tremendous amount of work and analysis on the structural capability of the bridge. But that whole process, the first transformer should come in September, and then we'll be through the end of the year getting the other 4 in. So if you hear about on the news one morning that we got the highway blocked somewhere down on Route 52, it may be the power company, and because those rigs will obviously, we'll be looking to Sheriff King back there for a little help on traffic control, but those rigs obviously take up the whole roadway. So with that, I'll open up for questions. If you have anything that you've heard about or constituents have voiced a complaint or something, feel free to pass it on to us. We'll be more than happy to address them or meet with the folks. So.
Thank you, Mr. Poff. We appreciate your update. Does anybody on the board have any questions?
Mr. Poff, I know this may or may not be a question for you, but I'll ask it anyway. The drop-off line that goes into Progress Park.
Right.
I know that AEP is certified Progress Park as a certified data center.
Right.
Or data processing center, or whatever the wording is. And I know that, of course, you all make money by selling electricity. Do you think that AEP is going to be helpful, or will they look for customers to help us market Progress Park in any way?
Well, it's an interesting question. Really, the best guy to answer that question is John Smoloff, and I think you talked to John. He's been in a number of meetings, but I'll share with you what I've heard. Okay, so put it in that category hearsay, but I understand that AEP did retain a consultant to do an analysis on and identify sites within its system that were highly qualified for data centers, and Progress Park was identified as one of those sites, along with a site I think they're working with Roanoke County in a similar situation. So from what I'm hearing, there are 2 sites that are out there, and my perceptions are with a guy like John Smolock, who works out of our Roanoke office, our AEP's Roanoke office, he's out there, that's exactly his charge. I mean, he's out there looking for opportunities to develop those kinds of loads. You know, it's a win-win for the county. It's a win for AEP, obviously, because data sites are huge power consumptions. You know, the downside of a data site from on a utilities perspective is they're pretty picky. They want high-quality power. They don't want a bunch of blips and distortions and things like that. But we see Progress Park, and clearly after this new line goes in, which will be a large 1,590,000 conductor, we're talking about a conductor that big for each phase, you know, delivering energy right out off the 765 grid right into Progress Park. It's going to be a huge enhancement to the quality of power there at that site. So I think this project will, you know, to the extent you guys were already a recognized viable site, this new line will make that viability even more important, you know, more credible. Yeah.
Does anybody, Mr. Dalton?
Ron, as part of this project or other projects, are any existing 138s or other transmission lines going to be decommissioned?
No, that's a good short answer. There will be no decommissioning of any lines that I know of. There will be some other ancillary enhancements to the protection system. You know, the protection control system will have to be modified. I don't remember Huffman Junction and some of those places, the other substations.
Be some just small work.
Yeah,
Relay
yeah,
side,
yeah.
those stations.
Yeah, nothing will be taken out. You know, there is a project on the horizon that hasn't been announced yet that will have some impact here. The project going up, the old line, the 1900 line that goes up towards Bland County will be facing a future rebuild, but that's going to be several years down the road. And you know, but that's not a part of this project. You know, it's a part of an obligation the company has to lines that are reaching the end of their service life. Plus, as you may remember, we ended up with some conditions in the special use permit that going through the National Forest that required some modifications to that line. So, you know, we very well may be back here in Wythe County a year or so later talking about that project. But that, you know, that will be a totally independent project driven by other factors. But short answer is no decommissioning. Right.
So look, potentially a rebuild, I call the Glen Lynn, goes across the lane.
Yeah, the Glen Lynn 138, John, help me, wasn't it a 40 vintage?
It's a mid-50s vintage.
Okay.
Yeah,
Somewhere that line, that's that double circuit that goes out by the Poor Farm and out off through Giles County in that direction. That's well out on the horizon. You know, a steel tower transmission line, 100-year life, that's a reasonable, you know, so you're looking at something it's a good performer. It has, you know, it served the company and the community as well, but that's way out on the horizon. The line that I was speaking of, it will be facing a rebuild or modification is the old 69 line. Let me try to think how it goes out. It crosses 77 as it goes north out of town, and you see it bounce from one side of 77 to the other through the big cut on a little Walker, and it follows 77 up through Bland County. That line will be coming up in the fairly near future because it is reaching. It's got easements on it that date back to 1919, and so it will be reaching the end of its life here pretty soon.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Paul?
And once again, if you do have constituents that call you, you know, about the project, don't hesitate to give us a call. We'll be glad to meet with them and talk with them.
Thank you, Mr. Poff. We appreciate that.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Gary, I went to the JIDA meeting last Thursday, and AEP has give the JIDA $5,000 for marketing and promoting the data center. With that being said, the next thing on the agenda is the Treasury report, but I don't see Sam this morning, so I'll move on down the line to the Budget Committee. Mr. Hall.
Mr. Chairman, Budget Committee made three recommendations. The first one is to offer Blue Ridge Mass Appraisal 25 cents per parcel as settlement of any outstanding payments for the 2012 reassessment. You'll see a letter from Mr. Hickey. We're requesting payment of $26,643.73. The Budget Committee met with council. Mr. Farthing was involved in that meeting and elected to do the 25 cents per parcel as settlement for the services on the reassessment.
Okay, come from a committee, it doesn't need a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
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 And aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Second recommendation is to amend and appropriate $5,000 for the Independence Day fireworks. The committee made this contingent upon staff exploring alternate sites to hold a county-sponsored event in coming years, and that this year's event be advertised as a joint town and county event.
Okay, again, coming from committee, it doesn't need a second, or do you any discussions? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Hausman?
Aye.
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 And the chair votes aye. Passes 7-0.
And the last recommendation from the Budget Committee was to amend and appropriate $1,187 for payment to Grubb Funeral Home, and that is in regards to Mr. Ralph Bowen's passing.
Again, coming from committee, it doesn't need a second. Is there any discussion?
Question.
We had asked do you have any information about who ordered the cremation rather than a burial?
Actually, I talked to the sheriff about that.
Oh.
Last body was cremated, the price has just gone up. That was the explanation.
Okay.
Mr. Hill?
Did you get any answer about who gets benefit from Social Security?
We've asked the question, I'm supposed to be able to talk to Mr. Baker. Mr. Baker, who I've been referred to.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
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 The chair votes aye. Passes 7-0. Next order of business on the agenda is the Fire and Rescue Committee report. Mr. Hausman?
Fire and Rescue Committee met January 22nd, 2014, made the following recommendation. To request the State Fire Marshal to conduct an inspection of all commercial buildings along the I-81 corridor between Wytheville and Exit 86.
Okay, come from committee, it doesn't need a second. Are there any discussions? Mr. Soleil, Mr. Dalton?
As you know, we have made that request. We're getting ahead of ourselves with the board action. We have a response that they will charge us $52 cents per hour for any review or time on the job. My intent is to take the letter that I've got to the General Assembly and Department of Housing and Community Development next week when we're in Richmond and talk about that subject of why we have to pay the state of Virginia to perform duties they're responsible to do.
Mr. Chairman, if it's however we do it with Robert's Rules of Order, I certainly make the motion to delay this action until after until our next board meeting, and that way maybe we can have some answers from the legislators.
Okay, I have a motion that we table this to our next meeting.
I'd second that.
Okay, I have a second. All in favor of tabling this until our next scheduled meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Table this to our next meeting. Next order of business, that concludes Fire and Rescue. Next order of business, County Administrator Report. Mr. Dalton.
I have a few items here. The first one is a Department of Criminal Justice Services, a grant award for the Violence Against Women's Act, the Peace Act. Mr. Board to accept that grant. This has already been budgeted in FY14 budget year. This is just a mid-year award that we received.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept this grant.
Have a second? Okay, have a second. I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Hausman?
Aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Next, Mr. Dalton.
Next item is the Virginia Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund Program, $2.1 million. This is for sewer down in the exit 24. That area of the sewer, we currently are in the process of water there. We had our initial conference call, kickoff meeting, Mr. Gills and Mr. Spencer, Mr. Vaughn, and others. We are proceeding with that. The next step will be to procure an engineer to design it. So I'd ask for permission to go ahead and advertise for that engineering services.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor of Mr. Dalton proceeding with this, say aye.
I've got a
Opposed?
question. Mr. Dalton, does that grant cover the line and the package plant?
100% line easement, purchase, engineering, total cost of the project.
Good. No change order.
You're getting so far ahead of me, Mr. Hill.
Sounds good.
I'll let Mr. Bear promise no change order. I won't promise that.
And I apologize, Mr. Hill, for getting ahead of myself there without any
It's all
discussion.
right.
Okay, motion passes. Next, Mr. Dalton.
Next item is the information letter concerning the merit court. Standard information, a bunch of websites if you're interested. BSS is currently participating in that program. And you have some information about volunteer rates, etc.
And there's no action needed on this.
No, sir.
Okay,
Next item is a letter asking that we return $9,584.66 of unspent money that BJCA project. We're in the process of writing that check. I just wanted to inform the board that our agent for that is the DSS, and we'll be asking the treasurer to return that unspent monies for last year.
do we need to take any action?
Yes, sir, I've reported to you with a
Okay.
number of money.
And you said we're sending how much back? It's 22.
$9,584.66.
It's 22,000.
Or 22,000.
Okay, that's what
We
I,
spent.
yeah, that's, okay, that's what I thought. I thought if we were going to get away with sending money 500 back, I'd vote yes.
They have demanded payment.
Mr. Dalton, you have any other business?
No, sir.
County Attorney's Report. Mr. Farland?
Nothing to report at this time, just working on some various things, some water department things, collection, and that process of understanding what's going on right now in the water department, so.
Next order of business is VDOT, but I don't see the VDOT representative here this morning.
I had told them around 10:30.
Okay.
Sheriff. Be a little long.
Sheriff King, would you like to bring anything from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I have two items. Actually, I don't think the numbers I've heard tossed around this morning. It's kind of small. We have received all of our vehicles with the exception of a pickup truck. We're in the process now of stripping the old vehicles and moving the equipment into the newer vehicles, then they have to be marked, cages, overhead lights, and so forth. So we're in the process of doing that now. The money from the Attorney General's office, $97,000 that I talked to you all about earlier. We have received the funds for that. They have been placed in the police activity fund, but I just notified Mr. Dalton yesterday of that, so I presume something that the Budget Committee will be taking up when they meet. And as far as trash collections go, we have passed the 20-ton mark. The weather hasn't been real cooperative with us the last few weeks.
Hard to pick up with frozen ground.
Yeah, it really is, or raining or anything else.
I was real surprised Sunday. I went to visit my brother, and I went down 52, and they'd picked up trash Saturday, and that really surprised me. And,
Yeah, they got as far as Jackson School, and then the weather got too bad for them to continue.
I would still request that all US 52, they didn't go up the loop. They started.
No, they started at the other end. They're still heading toward Poplar Camp next time they go out. Mr. McRoberts requested that they visit Rakestown Road, which is right on the county line between Carroll County and Wythe County. You know, we're not going to stop the little section that's in Carroll County. We'll keep on going through it. But still a road that our residents use. He's told me there's several problem areas over there. And I would ask that if y'all have any problem areas you want us to take a look at, we'll entertain that.
Always. I don't know when you've had a chance to go across Ramsey Mountain Road to the intersection over there at Locust Hill Road. It seems like the dumping problem has started again on that side of the mountain, not where they've always dumped before you get up there, that switchback curve. But after you cross the mountain gap up there, there's new trash. I did some road viewing yesterday, and there's pickup loads down through there. And request, if possible, to deploy the cameras. Let's try to get some convictions on these people.
We have to be able to place the cameras where they're not easily discovered, which is, I don't want to lose that much dollar-wise in cameras for somebody to be able to observe the camera from the road, which is the problem we have on the Max Meadows side of that mountain. To be able to get close enough to be able to make an identification and yet still have the camera hidden. It's a problem we're running into on the Max Meadows side. The officer that takes care of my camera placement was one of the officers that was injured back in December in a car crash. So we're going to be a little bit behind on the cameras.
I don't know of any signage left in the county about littering. And with the pickup, it would seem to me the quicker we could get that stuff cleaned up, it might curtail
more.
It's an advertisement. I can get by with it here. And it seems to grow exponentially once somebody starts dumping.
One truckload is all it takes to attract.
Start trash dump.
Yeah. I have talked with the trash detail about this. They are going to be hitting that area. It does kind of present us with a traffic problem, but we are going to be working our way through the traffic problem.
I have a question, Stephen, related to you and the sheriff. Have we made any progress with the trash dump problem at Max Meadows water tank property, or did you talk to Ms. Truesdale?
Yes. Mr. Dunford has done some review. They are doing some work and some monitoring of that area. I don't know how much has been cleaned up yet, but they are working on trying to locate individuals.
Is that county property or is that an easement?
That is a right-of-way. It's actually a state-maintained right-of-way all the way to the tank.
That's stretching the word maintain pretty good, but go ahead.
Actually, I was up there last week, they complained deer carcasses and stuff, but we had contact animal control officers. But there's probably some places up there, if we had somebody to set the cameras that could catch the deer. It's a dead-end road with a little cul-de-sac. They used to be paved, it's no longer paved, but we've got a building and a tank up there we can set the camera. It's been well used for deer carcasses and other carcasses.
I pretty much guarantee you could observe on camera some
I'm familiar
serious
with that
commerce.
road. There would be some spots there.
Some
where-
serious commerce on that cul-de-sac up there. Can that road be gated?
It's public right of ways. The state took it over in 1983. So it's a question for Mr. Russell, but I doubt it.
Okay.
Since it's got a road number on it.
This is one of the projects, you mentioned it earlier. As soon as the regional cleanup crew starts up again, which right now they're not operating, as far as going out in the weather and so forth, that is one of the areas that I plan to have them spend at least 2 days on each time that we get them, to get that site cleaned up. Any more? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave reports, I know that, in our rules of procedure, 6.4, that supervisors are allowed, 5 minutes of time during the day meeting, and I didn't see that anywhere on the agenda. Is that a change, or is that just, do what?
That's a mistake on my part.
Okay.
Mr. Hausman, since we got half an hour until VDOT is scheduled to be here.
Well, I don't have anything. I've got a couple of items under new business that I would like to discuss. I don't have anything as far as that, but I just want to make sure that I didn't know if that was a change since it was in our rules of procedure. So I don't mind mistakes. But so, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything other than that.
Okay. Well, we'll continue with supervisor report. Mr. Willis? Mr. Hall?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Hale?
Other than when we get at VDOT later.
I don't have anything.
And I do not have anything at the moment.
You want to do new business?
Well, I'm glad I brought it
You
up.
want to do new business?
I was paranoid.
Well, we wait on VDOT.
I'm going to do old business first.
There it is, okay.
Actually, I think maybe we were thinking a lot of things were coming up at VDOT time.
Okay. If no member would like to take a recess or a break, we'll continue with the agenda and come back to VDOT when Mr. Russell arrives, and we'll move on to old business. Mr. Dalton, do you have any old business?
I do not.
Okay, hearing no old business. Do we have any new business? We do. If I can find it here. Under new business, we have the consent calendar.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
You want to say it again?
Yeah, say that again. She didn't get it.
If I can get to it here, the new business. Okay, we have the consent calendar.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent calendar.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Here in a second, do we have any questions or discussion concerning the consent calendar? Here none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Hausman?
Aye.
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 And I vote aye. Consent calendar passes 7-0. The next order of business. Under new business is a tourism strategic plan. Mr. Dalton, would you like to speak to this?
Mr. Chairman, we've had this thing for about 2 years, on and off, sent it back to the tourism committee, revising it. I think this is the latest version. All the changes have been made to the tourism committee. This agreeable with all the changes. They've asked the board to accept this. And I will say that the original version said approved. But approved means that you, with all the recommendations, the connotation is that you follow through with, under approved, and budget all these things. And accepted is a matter that's taken on record, and you can accept each item as you go along with budget considerations. I would ask that you accept the tourism strategic plan.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept the tourism strategic plan?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I started to say that we're going to change some names, but under acknowledgements, I guess Gary Cody's name should still be in there, shouldn't it?
Yes.
Because he was part of what planned it, he just didn't hear anymore.
Do we have any other discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horning?
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next order under new business is the Blue Ridge Gatorade Facility Permit Modification. Mr. Dalton?
This is a permit that the Water Committee addressed. We've drafted a letter. I've asked for permission to sign this letter to set up the permit modification to our sewage plant. This allows them to concrete everything and include some rainfall in their collection system so that they don't have any off-site runoff.
Hear an explanation, I have a motion.
May want to make one change. It says Mr. Terry Truitt. That might make her upset.
Yes, it's Miss and then it's Mayor.
Yeah. What happened from the address to the salutation?
I have a motion with that correction.
I would make that motion.
Okay, well, I'll second it then.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Hausman?
Aye.
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 The chair votes aye. Motion passes. We'll go down to appointments. I know we have a couple, and Mr. McRoberts, do you have an appointment for the tourism committee yet?
I don't have one yet, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we'll bring that up again at the next meeting. We do have one appointment to the A corridor. I'd like to appoint Mr. Dalton to that committee and to that board, and me as an alternate. Do I have a motion?
I'll move. So move.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of appointing Mr. Dalton to the A corridor board, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave new business,
Yes.
I have, according to the Rules of Procedure 5.9, I would like to make a motion to reconsider with County Ordinance 2012-6, which is the motor vehicle ordinance, the part of the ordinance that requires people to pay a $20 fee for titled but unregistered vehicles.
I would second that.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Now, I understand that if we if we do reconsider, that it substantially changes the ordinance, which would require a public hearing, would it not?
Yes. I was waiting to see how we reconsider it.
Yeah, you call for discussion.
Well, I mean, excuse me.
Rewriting, changing.
Yeah, change it, but according to our rules of procedure, if, you bring it up, it talks about being, motion for reconsideration. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay. So it's just a motion for reconsideration. I got you.
A motion and a second, any discussion?
Doesn't have to be second.
Yes, in discussion, we beat this dog to death just a few months ago. And with misinformation from various sources, the ordinance as it stands hadn't had a chance to perform. What we have done by kicking this can around is that we've taken revenue away from the county. We knew that going in some of the ways that we modified it. And I understand the pain that some of us have when people disagree with things, but our obligation, to me, is to do what's right for the county. This will tap those people that are paying no taxes and the people that are using the most resources. So I'm not likely to change my mind the way we voted just a few months ago.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
Last year we raised personal property tax by over 9%. And then with this, we created a brand new tax, not one that that we modified or anything. This is a brand new tax. Basically, it's an ownership tax for those people who own vehicles without registering them. I know one of the problems that we talked about were the number of people who would buy a vehicle and put a farm use tag on it. This doesn't cause us to collect any property tax from those people who do that. As per the Commissioner's response this morning, Mr. Bear, is that right? If someone buys a $50,000 pickup truck and drives it off the lot with a farm use tag and does not register it, they do not pay any personal property tax on that. So, one, I'm not sure that it addresses what we were looking at, and two, we've created a new tax, and three is it taxes things that we had a dramatic increase in taxes on to begin with, and that's personal property.
Do I have the opportunity to respond?
Yes, Mr. Hale.
Mr. Halden, you make a good argument, but I think that it reinforces my point. We didn't create a new tax. That diverted from the placard that had always been changed. It brought in a new bunch of people that had been avoiding that tax before. So let's don't misrepresent it as a new tax. It was a new tax that cast the net wider. I'll agree with that. But you made a good example. If one of us buys a vehicle and drives off the lot and it's not registered, they never pay personal property. They may not fall under the law of a commonwealth that calls for them to have liability insurance either. So with going with the titling recognition, if the commissioner does her job or that office job is done, it certainly looks like to me that brings those people within the field of view and gets them in the tax base. That they're not paying now, which you just said. So why should they be outside of the tax base?
Well, because this does not bring them into the personal property tax base.
Yes, it does.
It does if a commissioner is transferring the knowledge.
According to Mr. Barry, would you mind to give Ms. Barker's response?
Dr. Halpin just asked me that question this morning, just for confirmation. I said, let me just call Faye and ask her. If we need, we can call Faye to come up here and talk about it. Her response was, by law, she says she only assigns personal property tax on registered vehicles. That's her response. morning.
And I personally asked Ms. Barker about, I have a tractor. It's an old tractor, but it's a tractor, and I've never paid personal property tax on it, but I'm not a farmer. So I asked Ms. Barker about that, and she said, I owe no personal property tax on it because it was classified as farm machinery. Not a farmer, but but since the tractor's classified as farm machinery, I don't pay personal property tax on it. So if somebody who is not a farmer is driving around in the vehicle that has a farm use tag on it and is not registered, they are not paying any personal property tax. So I don't think that this ordinance, or this portion of the ordinance, goes to what we had intended for it to go to. And again, it's, to my way of thinking, it's an increase in personal property tax over and beyond an increase of over 9%.
Well, are you really opposed to the tax or about the amount? Is the tax fair to tax personal property? Question one. It is a source of revenue, and we can readily agree that some people have avoided that revenue for many years. And they're not just farmers. There's those that you spoke of that don't have anything to do with the farm, but they're taking advantage of that way out of not paying taxes. I believe in a broader base will keep us from raising real estate taxes. A broader base will keep us from raising any taxes, in my opinion. Collect what's out there. Now, we're basing every bit of this opinion and an opportunity to bring this open for discussion that's going to take months based on one person's opinion. Just because the commissioner says or tells Mr. Baer that she don't think it's within the law to use the information at hand to expand her revenue role that she should pass out the bills for, I think we need another opinion before we start down that road.
But the commissioner is a duly elected constitutional officer who is charged with making those decisions.
That's not what you said a minute ago. You said it was her legal obligation that she couldn't tax.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, you related. Stephen said that's what she said.
I don't think that you said legal obligation, did you?
I don't remember the exact term. I know she said legally, she said I can only put on those that are registered. That was her term.
Mr. Chairman, could we call Ms. Barker up here so she could say out of her own mouth what she said?
Yes, I'd like to have Ms. Barker come up myself.
Could we also ask our attorney who's on the clock to get the book in here and see what the statute really says?
I'm trying to find.
Okay.
And the other thing, I mean, as we're discussing, I know that there's a motion on the floor, but maybe part of the discussion that we look at, Ordinance 1981-4, which is the exemption of farm equipment, which, and again, I'm not saying that we don't exempt farm equipment, but for me, if I own a tractor, I'm not a farmer. If I were a landscaper, I'd be paying personal property tax on that. I don't know why I'm not paying personal property tax on a tractor when I'm not a farmer. I don't have a, what do they call it, the farmer ID number, or what is it? I mean, there's a tax thing that you have to fill out.
You fill out a Schedule F.
Schedule F, yeah, I don't do that.
Well, Mr. Halsman, I agree theoretically with what you're saying, but let's just say you and I both, we go buy a tractor. Unless we go to the commissioner and say, I'm not a farmer, I want to pay taxes on it, how many of you think is going to do it regardless of what the ordinance says? Voluntary taxes never worked for the Romans, and they won't work for us.
I understand that, but even I, who was volunteering to pay taxes on a tractor, was told I do not owe taxes because of the ordinance that we have that says farm equipment is exempt. Again, I don't use it to farm.
But it's still classified as farm equipment unless you own a business that defines the business, the use of it as some other use.
And I don't completely understand that, why, if I own it and I'm not a farmer, I don't pay taxes on it, but if a landscaper owned that same tractor, he would pay personal property tax on it.
Yeah, but that's part of his business. You don't have a business that you make money with that tractor.
No.
So that's the difference, in my opinion, is from somebody that's got a business that uses equipment to do business.
Like
farming? Well, I mean, farming's exempt, it is a business, but even though that you don't have a business, you're not paying taxes on that either. But if you were a landscaper, that is a business where you're making money with that piece of equipment, so you're taxed on it.
Well, with the motion, and you all help me on this, I was trying to go by the rules and procedures. Let me just read this and see. This is what it says: reconsideration. An action shall be reconsidered only upon a motion of a member voting with the prevailing side on the original vote, which I did not. A motion to reconsider may be made by a member voting on the losing side of the original vote after a 6-month period has elapsed, which is me. A motion to reconsider may be seconded by any member, which it has been. So in a vote to reconsider, what I want to do is do away with the titled but unregistered. But the motion just says a motion to reconsider. So I'm assuming maybe that if we do that, then we open it back up for discussion.
Well, I'd like to wait before we take a vote. I'd like to wait and see what Ms. Barker has to say about why she can't tax on titled vehicles.
Okay. Well, can we take a break from that while motion's on the floor?
You can table it until she shows up.
Okay. Then I would suggest that as the person that made the motion, I would be glad to do that. And Mr. Chairman, I would also ask for a break until 10:30.
I have a motion on the floor to table this for the time being. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll be in a brief recess until 10:30. Okay, I'm going to call us back to order. I see Mr. Russell from VDOT's got here, and we're going to go back with his report. Come forward, Mr. Russell.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Russell.
Most of the maintenance requests that we got the last time we were here, I believe, have been taken care of, other than a few. And 619, it had been requested to look at placing chevrons at a cross drain. There was kind of a wide area, possibly wanting a guardrail, but we actually sent the crew. They went out last week to put those chevrons up. The ground was frozen. They couldn't get the posts in the ground. So we do have that on the schedule. The Whispering Pines, the delineators there at that cross drain, that is also still on schedule to carry out. Francis Mill Road, I have requested a speed study to the traffic and engineering, but haven't heard anything back on it yet. Projects that we have going on, Johnny Lane, 652, they have started clearing on that project. Bridge on Route 749 in Cedar Springs. Half of the bridge has been demolished. They're working on that. That route is signalized. And a bridge on Route 830, that's an old section of the Blacklick Road, a little loop. There's one leg of it is .03 miles long. There is a bridge there that we are going to have to rebuild. That's scheduled to go to ad in April and May. It will be a precast structure, so hopefully within a couple of weeks we can have it reopened.
Is that on the old road?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that's pretty well concludes my report, and I'll take any new maintenance requests or try to answer any questions you have.
Does any board member have any questions for Mr. Russell?
Well, I just,
We'll start
no.
this end.
Well, I don't have a request because I sent them in, by email, but I want to thank you and Mr. Fowler, because that's the easiest way to, when somebody calls me, just pass them on. And the thing that I really appreciate, one, is you taking care of it, but two, is I always get an email back, explaining that, it's on the schedule or whatever. So that makes it a whole lot easier to deal with, to help us and help you all deal with the people. So thank you for that. That's the only thing I have. So it's a thank you.
Mr. Willis?
No, thank you.
Mr. Hall?
No, sir.
Mr. Hale?
Jeff, thanks for the signage on stopping those trucks down there. Do you think that's helping some, the no-through route for trucks? I drove and looked at them yesterday. On the major rim road, after you go under the interstate there, can a truck turn around there if he has any ability at all? That's where the sign got put, down there at the end of the pavement. I don't know whether you can turn a truck around there or not. If they ignore that sign, we know what's going to happen on down the road.
Right.
So
I guess at this point, what else could we do? We do have adequate signage on the primary route prior to getting off on Major Graham, warning them this route's not recommended for trucks. We also put up interstate signs with arrows saying this way to the interstate.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I guess the sign you're referring to is a last ditch effort. If you go further than this, you're doomed. So I mean,
Coy, couldn't you put a sign up there, if you go farther than this, call this number?
It will cost you this much.
I think the signage is a great help.
It should help, and other than standing there flagging 24 hours a day, I don't know. There are still those that are going to follow a GPS probably.
Let's come on up 52 a little bit and talk about what we can do now to help each other with the Archer Road project. I'm ready anytime you can make it available. Let's call a meeting of all those landowners that are going to be impacted. I think it would be beneficial if we get a county map of that section that shows who the landowners are, and then you let us tell you where you need right of way. I drove that again yesterday, and those impacted areas, some places the fence is already set back. And one of the landowners has said, I'll put the fence wherever you need it just to get it there at that pond.
Right.
Would y'all look at shifting away from that pond to get rid of that maintenance problem and take the road a little bit to the southeast? If he's willing to move his own fence back, that sounds like a win-win to me. And you get down there in that big drainage area, all that, I looked at it, there's no fence involved there. It just goes from the top of that cut right back into the woods. So I guess what we need to do is get all these landowners, and you bring the right agreement, and let's get them all in a room and get them all to sign at one time. It'd save us and we'd be ready to go.
And that's been a while since we visited that, but probably good if you and I maybe rode through there and looked at it and seen exactly prior to the meeting, and that way. I think the biggest issue was the fence and needing to be moved back to widen the road and eliminate some of those.
You go all the way to the Red Hall Road end of it, after you make that 90-degree curve down there. Somebody has just rebuilt that fence and set it back off the left side only, which would make sense to me that you take it all on one side. Now, if you can, let's look at, because I guess the funding would have to come from a different source. Those pipes on the big drainage at the foot of the hill before you get to Red Hollow Road, they failed. The bottom's gone out of them. They're not carrying the capacity. So do you get drainage pipe replacement money from a different source other than the pavement money?
Any drainage issue should have been addressed with the quote putting forward for the project, I would have thought.
Well, hopefully it did, because it's inadequate, obviously, because it runs over there all the time. There will be excess material right there if you want to raise that fill across that bottom. But the pipe has failed now, so I wish you would do an overview that we don't put this road in, put the pavement down, and then a year from now go in there and tear it all up. Let's do the pipe now if we can and get it sized. That's a big drainage. I'm sure y'all got aerials that show that the same water, it's a problem up at the loop up there at 52. That's the same drainage, isn't it, Mr. Dalton?
Actually, I'll speak. Every rural rustic project today we've done, VDOT's going in and resized all the culverts and put new culverts in. Even places I thought they took out brand new culverts and driveway culverts, they do all that under the rural rustic construction, so they will size those.
Yeah, that
what you're talking about is going to be pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
Because the road, current road is about the level of creek, the drainage is. So.
Well, that's why I brought up a construction thing, that if we look at this and you size the contributive area, that's got to be a pretty good pipe. And if we go to the hydraulic charts, that would be a good candidate for big elliptical pipes in there. And there's material right there that's going to have to come off that hill, that could be part of doing this right on that end of it, to raise that thing up some to get it out of that drainage and put new pipes in there. And if that's part of the job, that's just great.
We'll have to be careful, and of course we want the hydraulic engineer to do a study to see what pipe is needed.
It's huge.
But we need to keep in mind the concept of the rural rustic is not to construct a project, but it's a pave in place. Now, we can widen, we can do some small fills, but you don't want to kick yourself into a category of...
Yeah, that gets you into no design or whatever y'all's category is.
That's one of the benefits of the rural rustic is there's not a whole lot of work involved, so.
Okay, so you let me know, we'll set up that meeting. I'd like to get it sometime in March if we can, so you guys can go to work 1st of July when you have the money.
I'll get a hold of them. We'll go look at it and set up a meeting.
Now, if I missed something, Jeff, you sent us a list of sections of fence or right of way, or somebody said that they were to move their fences in those areas. That's the only places. Is that what we mean about?
Yeah, all of them agreed but one, and that's why I'd like to have a meeting for the peer pressure to.
Okay, I got it.
You're going to need something signed. I know you don't do, and if you're going to get some right-of-way there.
I don't know that we necessarily need right-of-way, probably a right of entry and an agreement that they're not opposed to us taking their fence down.
Right, and that you're not going to put it back up.
Right, we can't put the fence back up.
Yeah, the rural rustic is we're going to do it on the 30-foot right of way that they currently have.
Right.
But we need to adjust that where the right-of-way is to be able to get it through there. It's so narrow. That's what the whole thing's about. If you could do it where it is.
The fences are prohibiting us from getting the width we need.
Any update on Duncan Road?
As far as what aspect?
As far as when you're gonna start construction?
I don't have anything right now, so.
When will we have the 6 year, secondary rate 6 year hearing, y'all will develop those schedules by then, won't you?
Right. I was talking with Bristol the other day. They're working on the numbers. I would anticipate June. We will have the hearing, so.
When money's allocated, Coy, you'll have some dates put in
Right.
probably on these next projects, like Archer Road.
Okay.
Until they allocate the money, it's just on the plan. No dates. Is that right?
I don't have the plan with me right now, but I'll check when I get back. I'll check back. I don't know when it was scheduled to go to Ed, but I can look and let you know.
Mr. Dahl, did you talk to him about that problem down at Max Meadows at the PH Church?
Jeff and I have tried to call each other. We finally got a few minutes on the phone yesterday. But no,
Here's one that Mr. Vaughn come up with that I think is just a real good solution. If we make this thing a one-way, they'd keep the trucks out of there. I didn't bring the photographs. We've got pictures. The signs haven't worked. They're still driving off in that drop right down there. It's probably the church. Yeah. What acts does it take to designate that as a one-way street?
I imagine approval from traffic and engineering and installing the signs, so. I can make the request if the board supports it.
Well, it's got to be the inside of that 90-degree loop there. It's got to be one way all the way, I think. The church people will be impacted somewhat. You wouldn't go out there in front of the church with it being two-way and then turn to one-way, would you?
Probably not.
Right. That's one solution that would be achievable with two signs.
Mr. Hale, my question with that, do you have, okay, if you make it one way, do you have trucks, are you going to make it, which way you're making it one way?
So the loaded trucks coming from the plant won't turn in there because a truck driver won't drive by a one-way street sign. All the other signs that take reading, you may get to work or not, but if you put up one way, the posted symbol for one way, they normally will honor that. So if you were coming down Peppers Ferry Road, it would show that it was one way, you couldn't turn in there.
Do we have any other trucks coming from the interstate into Max Meadows that's turning up that road?
You mean going the way that we would allow? No, I've never seen one make that mistake.
It's always been coming off of Peppers Ferry Road.
That's why it's hard for me to believe that we can blame it all on GPS. It seemed like to me if it was a GPS error, it would turn some of them left there in front of the store. But as far as I know, Coy, you've worked them over there. Have you ever seen one get in the wrong way?
Not that way, no. How many houses are out the lower part of that? McGee?
Houses?
Yeah.
McGee and one more is all that's on that street, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm not sure that one. I just wonder how it would impact them.
you got Talman McGee on the left, you got his son right past that. Church on the right. Before you get that, there's Mr. Black on the right there, that one building. Once you get to the curve, there's nobody. till you get across the railroad tracks. And there's a trailer over in the pine trees there across the ball.
So if you make that a one-way, he's gotta come out and go across the railroad track to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to go up across the railroad tracks and by the ball field and come back in. All the churches.
I don't have no problem with that, I don't know about that.
Well, you're gonna get a recommendation from your traffic people.
If that's what y'all want me to do.
Well, either that or let's fix the corner so a truck can get around it without falling in that hole. And I'm not sure that that's really doable anyway.
Is that drop inlet there, is that VDOT truck responsibility if it gets broken, tore up to fix it?
Standing here, I don't know, I'd have to go out and look. If it's on the right of way, it's ours.
Probably was either free or permit or something. You've got 90 feet of public right of way both ways on those two roads.
Steven just pulled it up.
Got plenty of room to fix it if you really wanted to.
I'll take
Yeah,
a
he's
look
got
at
it
that.
on the screen there if you're interested in.
I'll take a look at that and run it by traffic, see what they recommend, and get
All right.
back with you all before we proceed. with
Thank
any
you.
signage.
But years ago, and it may have been Joe, that there is a railroad side that Norfolk Southern uses on the other side of the church
Mm-hmm.
that may play into this. Turn up towards the railroad track to the left, there used to be an old sawmill out there.
Mhm.
Many and many of the tractor trailer, lumber, rail cars, as a matter of fact, Norfolk Southern, when they were working on the tracks, actually will use that area out in there with trucks and stuff now.
Well, that may very well be where they're gonna put this transformer on the ground, because that other rail down there, other than their yard, they got a track into their yard down there, and but there's 3 different sidings down there that impact. I was amazed when he called it the Max Meadows Rail Yard. That sounds big, doesn't it? But,
Well,
thank you.
he's gone now, but I believe that the new transformers are coming into their yard.
Mm-hmm.
That's down right before you get to Miller's Creek Bridge, going on the right. That's where the transformers will be unloaded right there. That's where the last ones were unloaded about 15 years.
Mr. Horn, did you have anything?
Oh, was Corey done?
I'm done.
Okay. I have a few. Silings Road, I was told it needed gravel and scraping. And I'm going to ask again for back road to be scraped. Last time they told me it didn't have enough potholes, so if they say that this time, tell them meet me at the end of it, and they can ride the bus up through it a couple times. The other thing is, and I don't know what to do on this, but anyway, at the bottom of Speedwell Hill, at the intersection of St. Peter's Road and Old Bank Road, there's a bus stop right there now. I was asked that we put up a bus stop ahead sign coming down the hill, I guess you'd be going west on St. Peter's Road before you get down into Speedwell. But I mean, with them going to do construction on that road, I don't know if it's something you want to mess with or not. That's all I think I've got. What, Mr. Bear?
Do you know
Got
that?
one more that,
Oh.
Ms. Myers just gave me, and I'll give it to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you know the residents where that sign needs to be up, or?
It's right there at the intersection. I mean, you wouldn't need a sign on the Speedwell side. You would need a sign coming down the hill because, I mean, you come around the curve and you're right there in the middle of the intersection.
Mr. Russell, littering signs on the roads, you know, I see them in other counties. Who's responsible for putting them up? Is it VDOT, the state, county? Who's responsible for?
At one time, it's been a long time and few and far between, but I believe we have installed them at problem areas.
You installed them on Dunford Road for us, and then on the right where the guardrail. So my understanding is it could be a request from the board.
I would like to request, you know, at the parking ride at Fort Chisel, no littering signs be put up and along the road, because and around the truck stops up there, because we have a horrible problem with trash on the service roads.
I've got the parking ride. Was there another location?
Well, anywhere up Chapman Road, I mean, if you could space them out, you know, do not littering signs close to the truck stops up there. And I noticed he was doing some construction or digging on the overlap down there around the 76 on the southbound side. Are they putting something in?
I'm not aware of it, so I don't know what they would be doing at this point. I don't think we've initiated any projects, so.
I just seen them out digging something up, a little excavator there, and they've been working there for 2 or 3 days.
It could be preliminary engine 4 project testing. I will check, but I'm not aware of anything. Okay. You know more than I do at this point.
Does anybody have anything else for Mr. Russell?
If he has time, tell us about your new acquired ditching truck that Andy was telling. How about telling the board how that's going to work, and where will it go to work when the ground thaws?
Each year, we're allocated a certain amount of money to purchase equipment, and at one point in time, 20 years ago, we could send a motor grader out by itself, pull ditches. You could broadcast the waste over on the field side of the slope, spread it in the road, use it for material. But with the times have changed, environmental regulations, at this point, anything we pull out of the ditch, pretty well, we've got to pick up, haul it off, and put it in the approved waste area. So you've went from a one-man operation, now you've got flaggers, you've got dump trucks, you've got loaders, you've got graders, 6 to an 8-man crew to pull a ditch. And we have downsized, as y'all are probably aware. We've shut down area headquarters, still got the same amount of area to cover. One of the things that's really suffering is our ditching efforts, and we've recognized that. I found out, I discovered a couple years ago that they do make a ditching truck, and we have ordered one. I don't know when it will arrive, but the basic concept, the way this truck works, and there are 2 others in the state of Virginia that they really like the way it works. This truck, it's got an arm that sticks out the side with a conveyor belt, and there's a 2-foot auger on that arm, so he can drive along the roadway. He's able to manipulate that arm, put it in a ditch line, and it pretty well cleans out the ditch, any residue, and it brings it up the conveyor as you go along. And right behind it is a dump truck backed up to it. They connect. Well, it loads the truck as you're going down the road. So we're hoping to be able to eliminate the need for a whole crew to ditch, still do regular maintenance operations. Hopefully, we would need 2 flaggers, that truck driver, and some dump trucks. So use less crew, get more accomplished. You don't put dirt in the road. You have no environmental concerns. So Yeah, it's a lot like a milling machine, only it's for the ditch, so it was a rather expensive piece of equipment, a pretty good investment, but knowing that the ditch is a very vital part of the roadway system, we felt it was a worthwhile investment, and we'll see how it pans out when it gets here, so.
So then environmentally disturbed, you have to have an environmentally approved site to dump it in?
You still have to have that.
So as long as you don't do anything to it, whatever's there just can stay there forever. But when you try to improve it, you got to pick it up and move it off somewhere.
Right. We can no longer broadcast it. Now, you can spread it in the road, but, used to, we would put it out on the shoulders, which essentially would help build up the shoulders.
It's all that stuff that makes your job easier, isn't it?
Yeah. But, that's the rules we had to play by, and we just got to come up with a game plan to get the most we can.
Does anybody have anything else, Mr.
A
Dalton?
couple things that came up over the last few meetings. Jeff, would you explain who utilizes the station down at maintenance headquarters, old maintenance headquarters that are there to patch it down?
It's kind of clear
Trucks and stuff.
as mud, but I'll give it a good shot. About 15 years ago, we were pretty well told it was mandated that all interstate maintenance would go to contract. And we pulled our VDOT trucks off. We put it out to contract. Of course, our area, VMS had it. TME has had it. However, last year, the Bristol District VDOT bid off the contract ourselves. So once again, we have the contract for maintaining the interstate. But we don't have the VDOT numbers, the truck, nor the personnel to put back and cover the interstate and still do the primary and secondaries. So we are subcontracting the work. And I guess you asked, why did we do this? Well, we're now in more of a managerial position. We can oversee it. We've got more say-so in what happens on the interstate. We are subcontracting. I think Wythe County, the name has eluded me. Who? Melvin Enterprises, John Melvin. We're using him for snow removal. We use other contractors according to what we're needing, paving, mowing, different subcontracts. But in doing that, the old Fort Chiswell area headquarter lot, that's a station area that we let the contractors mobilize in, use. We also stock salt and other materials there for interstate maintenance purposes. Did I answer?
So basically, I think the bottom line is there's a couple, maybe even more than a couple contractors. Whoever VDOT is subbed out with has the opportunity to lease or rent space in that. It could be John Melvin, it could be.
We also have a group, they're more based in Carroll County, but I believe they do help maintain up to 81 on 77. I believe their name is Interstate Group. It's another contractor. So right now they're pushing snow on that portion of 77 South. So we've got different contractors that do utilize that lot under our management.
And I guess the other thing we talked about, and some discussion about water on culverts and stuff being stopped up. And I think what Jeff and I finally talked about was if they don't know about it, they can't fix it. So just email Jeff and letter if you see water on the roadway or think there's a culvert closed. They'll go get it cleaned out, but they need to know where it's at because they got hundreds and hundreds of miles and 12 guys riding the road on a daily basis working. So it's hard. We've got to tell them sort of where to focus their attention sometimes or help them.
Does anybody have anything else for Mr. Russell? Mr. Russell, we appreciate you coming and thank you for your information. And all your assistance is extremely appreciated.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay, we'll move back up to Mr. Hausman's motion, if you want to restate your motion.
Well, my motion, as per the outline in the rules of procedure, is to reconsider ordinance 2012-6, the part that requires citizens to pay a title tax for titled but unlicensed vehicles.
And Mr. Horner, you still second?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, at this point, it's not a motion to change it, it's a motion to reconsider it.
Reconsider. Okay, we're open for discussion. Ms. Barker, we've called you up here to kind of clarify what Mr. Bear has told us, and that is that you only tax
registered
vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't find the code right off. And all of my commissioner friends that I can contact, they're in Richmond at legislation days, so I can't call any of them to give me that code. And just coming up here really quick, I just didn't have time to look it up. It's always been like that for the 40 plus years that I've worked in the office, that you could only tax registered vehicles, not titled. So I'm sure there's a code somewhere, but I'm not sure where it is.
All right, Mr. Barlow, did you find anything in the code?
I did find a code section, section 3503, 58.1 talks about taxation, and then what goes on a couple sections after that about what can be exempted, like farm machinery and animals and other things. And once Faye gets a chance to look it up and figure it out, I mean, she may have a different answer. I mean, the code section seems to say the commissioner is to determine the value of each individual automobile, and that's what she's taxing. So to me, this one section here, there may be other sections out there that refers to what she's talking about, but to me, this section sounds like the commissioner determines the value of each automobile and then assesses a tax on that based on its value. And the section goes on to talk about how you get value from NADA or whatever other sources you can use.
That's what we do.
But it doesn't specifically.
It doesn't distinguish between titled versus registered. I kind of messed around on the internet. Fairfax County has everybody file some kind of form with the commissioner's office on May 1st of every year or something, saying here's the vehicles I own. And they're required to file some kind of form or return.
We used
to
do that years ago. We used to have those.
And then that would identify what vehicles they own. I know now you're pulling the information from DMV records.
Only for the license fee, though. That's.
How do you determine the personal property tax? Do you look at the DMV records? Or?
DMV downloads registered vehicles.
Okay. So I think you just need to give Faye a chance to figure out what's the supporting language behind the process the commissioner's office has apparently followed for 40 years or so.
Yeah. I guess it's been like that forever, but it's been like that for the 40 plus years that I have been in there. So.
Right. But the code section I found in the short time I had just says each individual automobile. It doesn't distinguish between registered and titled.
Yes, Mr. Dodd.
For logging equipment and landscaping equipment, you just picking up those off
their schedules that they file with their federal income tax. We get copies of those back from Richmond.
So, if I guess the question, just trying to think off the wall, out of the box. Like on my F forms, I include all my vehicles and tractors and stuff. And I'm sure that anybody that's running farm use is throwing that, taking most exemptions they can off their taxes.
But with the, there was a ordinance several years ago that we can't tax farm equipment.
Right. Well, I know the farm, it says anything that deals with gardening, horticulture and stuff. But I guess this is what I was getting to. I include my pickup trucks on that same form too. And even if I didn't, mine have tags. Let me clarify that right now. But if I had that on there, here there's a means there you could pick those up if they were depreciating. And I can't imagine anybody buying a $40,000 pickup truck and not putting farm use and not depreciating. That's me. Maybe they are. I just couldn't see them.
I saw one Sunday a brand new dually, brown, chocolate brown dually with the plastic farm use tags on, but I can't, that's a police officer's job to pull.
But if you go by title, what you're saying, you don't know whether there's anything written in the code says you can't go
No,
by
I
title.
don't know right now.
It's just that always we went by
Yeah,
registered vehicles and not title vehicles.
That's correct.
You're saying that there may not be nothing in the code
There
that
may
says
not be.
that
I
we
don't
can't
know.
go by
'Cause
title vehicle.
It's always been like that since I've worked in the office.
Well, you know, the few people, which I think I've had 5 calls on this, and once I explained to them what we're trying to do, that we're trying to pick up people that's not registering their vehicles, they're buying vehicles, but they're just putting farm tags on, and they're getting by with not paying any personal property tax or a sticker fee, a license fee. And they say, oh, well, they should pay just the same as I do.
Yeah.
And they understand that. And, you know, I don't know what the, you know,
But if we,
what the big controversy is over it.
but what we've done here, I mean, all we've done is picked up, if it's a titled vehicle, but it's not registered, all we're doing is taxing them $20.
The license fee is all.
So if we went back and changed that to regular, if we went back and changed it to registered vehicles like it used to be, and then she could use the tax forms, if she looked on their tax forms to find out if they've got pickups on there, then she could tax their pickups that way and get the personal property tax, which is going to give you more money instead of the $20.
Well, I don't understand why she can't charge personal property tax on the titled vehicles if you see that they're titled. If I have a vehicle's titled to me, and it tells you right there what kind of vehicle it is, make, model, and what year it is, why can't you assess a value to that and charge me personal property tax?
I can if there's not a code saying I can't.
That's what I'm saying. We need to find out if there's a code that says we can only charge personal property tax on the titled vehicle. I mean, on a registered vehicle.
I understand what you're saying.
May I ask a question? And I just want to clarify or make sure I understand. Mr. Chairman, are you talking about charging the $20 title tax and assess it for personal property and charge personal property tax too?
I mean, you do on a registered vehicle.
Okay, all right. And at one time, you know, we had talked about like a restriction as far as like, you know, age of the vehicle and that sort of thing, but none of that is covered in here. I guess one point that I'm making is I think that this is still too cloudy for us to go ahead with it without reconsidering it and looking at it and seeing exactly what we can do and what we should do and what's the best thing to do. I don't think that that the $20 title tax is addressing what what a lot of the board thought that it would would address, and that's the the personal property tax. Plus the fact that, again, I know I keep saying this, but we increased personal property tax by over 9% last year, and then we turned around and added. And Mr. Hale, I know you say it's not a new tax, but for lack of a better terminology, I'll say a new tax for titled vehicles because it's a tax that nobody in Wythe County has ever paid before.
Mr. Hausman, just one question on that. If we increase personal property tax on people that have registered vehicles, if we reconsidered this ordinance, but we still left the $20 on those that have registered vehicles, how does that impact the property tax. The people that have titled vehicles that aren't registered aren't paying the personal property tax. So the increase has no effect on them.
What I'm talking about is, what we've done is.
You want to do away with the $20?
What we've done as, as a board is that I could be there with two personal vehicles that I'm paying a title or a registration fee. I'm paying personal property taxes on. I could be sitting there with two more vehicles that I don't run on the road, that I use for parts or again, whatever. So, but what we're saying is I will have to, also pay a title tax on them. But I don't pay personal property tax. So I just think it's too muddy without some, without looking at it and going forward. I mean, I looked at our ordinance, this exemption for farm equipment ordinance from it's ordinance 1981-4, and this is how it defines farm machinery: any implement or tool, either manual or power-driven, used in conjunction with farming, which includes the tilling of the soil, the raising of crops, horticulture, and gardening, including the keeping of animals and fowl. That defines the machinery, but it doesn't define who uses it.
Can I ask one more question? Faye, this ordinance, what impact does it have on your ability or inability to collect on personal property tax?
Well, I don't collect.
Or to assess, excuse me.
We'll have to download the titled vehicles now, and that's going to cause another fee for my office to be charged, but it wouldn't be any more work or anything because it just downloads onto the computer automatically off of DMV. But we do know that antiques are exempt. Mopeds and all that kind of stuff are exempt. So, I personally, I don't think that you're going to have a great deal of trucks. I mean, you might have 100 in the county that are running with county, just farm use tags on them, the plastic ones. I know.
They could be $600-700 worth of personal property taxes that were not collected off of them. And I agree with you, Mr. Hausman. I think we need to revisit, as far as the age of vehicles.
And I think another thing on that, if I may say, I don't think it should go back forever on those titled vehicles. I think there needs to be a cutoff date on it, because if you go back forever, you're going to be opening a can of worms.
Well, that's what I think we need to set a
date,
a
time on there.
A year.
3 years, maybe.
That we go back.
Maybe 3 years, but not go back forever.
And that's something I think we need to discuss on.
But as the ordinance is written now, you would have to go back.
Yeah, forever.
But as procedure, the way that we're doing things now, and as you say, have been done for 40 years or whatever, this doesn't impact personal property tax.
Right.
That's right.
Right. So, Mr. Chairman, what my motion is to, reconsider it in however form you deem best, whether it's a work session or, that's my motion.
Okay. We've got a second, and we'll take a vote in a minute, but one clarification is that we need to find out by statute if we can tax on titled vehicles.
Mr. Barker, we're talking about whether this is a new tax or not. And have you considered, you've always sold the placards for the windshield. This is that same dollar value.
I understand.
It's not a new tax.
No,
we're just expanding it to cover all the people that should have been paying it in the first place. Now, if this information comes to you that there's whatever amount of vehicles out there, whether it comes from DMV or comes from the sheriff's office, your job is to say what they're worth and what the tax
That's
value
exactly
is, and then
right.
you're out of it.
That's exactly right.
So I really don't understand why we're having a long conversation about this. If we need to change it, I think what we have now ought to stay in place until we come up with something to change it. Then we'd vote on it. But this happened, and then we went back and gave a grace period that we cut $5 out for part of the confusion. That cost the county $85,000 or so in revenue. Then there was another one that we really believed, and the intent was to get you this information so it would put those people on the tax rolls that had been avoiding the tax rolls. And now that hasn't happened either.
Well, I mean, like I said before, you know, it's always been in the years that I have been there, and probably years before I was there, that cars that were not registered have never been taxed.
I know.
And I have to look into it. That's the only thing I can do. I can look into it to see if we can, because I couldn't find the code when I came over, before I came over.
Okay. And even if we do reconsider, Joe, it's not changing the ordinance now. We'll have to vote to change the ordinance, repeal the ordinance,
Okay.
or change it. It will still be in place. We're just we're voting on to just take a reconsideration of the ordinance and work on it, and then we would vote.
I think we're talking about entirely different things there. I mean, you're talking about the license fee, and you're talking about registered vehicles, titled vehicles. I think you're talking about two totally different things.
We are talking about two different
That's
things.
what
We're
I'm
talking
saying.
about personal property and the license
That's what I'm
fee.
saying. You're talking about two different things totally.
I think we're talking about a license fee and then also personal property tax, which personal property tax is not part of this ordinance.
That's exactly right.
So that's kind of where my question was leading, was this ordinance doesn't affect your ability to assess on personal property.
No, it's just if I can find a code.
Correct, right. Okay. I think what the board, most of the members of the board are saying is, you know, if someone's driving a brand-new truck and it's not foreign use, and we have opportunity to assess personal property tax, we would be in support of that.
Yeah.
If there's a way, if it's not, if there's a code that says, you know, you
If there's a
can't do
code
it
saying
because
we
it's
can't do it, we
not
can't do it,
registered,
you know,
then, you know, that becomes a state issue.
What do you think the position is if the code is silent on that issue?
I'm going to see what the Department of Taxation has to say about it, you know. I'm going to call the Department of Taxation and ask them if they can tell me the code. But like I said, all of the commissioners are gone to Richmond right now. I didn't go, but most all of the commissioners that I can talk to and ask the question, they have gone to Richmond to legislation days.
And I would also request that Mr. Farley check in on it too.
Yeah, and I'll communicate with Faye, you know, I'll look at what they tell you and see what else I can find.
Mr. Dalton, you have something?
That was going to be my suggestion. Faye and county attorney work together on this issue.
Okay, does anybody have any other questions for Ms. Parker? Thank you, Faye.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second to reconsider ordinance number 2012-6. I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Housen.
Aye.
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 Yeah.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes 7-0. Mr. Dalton, I know we have the informational package in that, and hope everybody's had a chance to look over it. Is there any other information he's brought before the board?
Yes, sir. I'd like to read a proposed resolution written over here concerning Wythe EMS. Whereas Section 15.2-955 Code of Virginia 1950, as mentioned, requires local government approval of any emergency medical service organization operating within that locality. And whereas Wythe EMS has appeared, I'm within the EMS, has appeared before the Wythe County Board of Supervisors to request approval to provide basic life support services within the boundaries of Wythe County as designated in the future by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors. Whereas the Wythe Board of Supervisors has determined it to be in the best interest of the citizens of Wythe County for Wythe EMS to provide these services. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Wythe County Board of Supervisors grants approval to Wythe EMS to provide these services and obtain agency license per approval of the Office of Emergency Medical Services, Virginia, adopted this 28th day of January 2014. I would request that the board adopt that. And the reason for that is we have, as directed by the Board of Supervisors, we have made license for Wythe EMS. And part of, we've been told by the licensed agent that the board, this is one of the items that was lacking in their application, this resolution.
Okay, gentlemen, you've heard the request of the resolution from Wythe EMS. Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Horny?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The resolution passes. Mr. Dalton, do we have any other business coming before the board?
We got off appointments. You need to appoint directors of emergency management for Wythe County. Discussion has been co-directors.
I'll appoint my...
I guess for clarification, do you have a puzzle look?
Gene's always got a puzzled look.
The emergency management director, in case when we have an event that may declare need of emergency, that person is in charge. And the reason for the co-director, nobody can stay there 24/7. And we're going to do co-directors as we did with Mr. McDaniel in the past.
Okay, as being chair, I appoint myself as director and appoint Mr. Dalton as co-director. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So appointed. Mr. Dalton, is anything else to bring from the board? Does any member have anything they would like to bring before the board?
The economic development meeting, y'all will be in Richmond next Thursday. We'll be meeting on Friday. The budget committee, one of our members has a conflict. We'd like to change those from 8 o'clock to 7 o'clock, starting in February.
With me.
Jared, do you have any problem with that? Okay. Mr. McRoberts.
I got a call from Sam Allen, and he said, please, get him to fix the door. You know what door I'm talking about.
And also, I spoke with Mr. Alley, and can I ask, where are we as far as installing a shower in the new building?
It's the answer, don't know.
Do what?
I said I do not know the answer. I know on the mud issue in the back, it's just been frozen.
Right, and he said they understood that, they got those little orange traps and stuff, but the shower and also, like, he was talking about like the hose bid for washer. I mean, is there hookups for washer drying? I didn't know.
We were gonna put a sink in the middle of the room, so I think there is potential for a water in the middle of the room. That'd be my answer. And I'll go down there today and see if there's not. But I know there was a intended to put a sink in that middle one, which never had a bigger bath.
And while we were talking about lead lines, let me ask you, of course, the Fire and Rescue Committee knows, you know, when we met with my folks, have they turned in a list of people that they say that are certified for extrication?
I forwarded, thought I forwarded everybody, they said they had 7 people. that
No,
was-
I mean, I know the number.
Yeah.
But no names? Okay. And I told Mr. Alley that, I told him, and of course, that's what I told him at the, I think, Mr. Hill, you were out of town, I think, but Mr. Reeves, you were there, and I told him that if they, you know, sent in the list of names, that I would make that recommendation about the crash truck, but I talked to him and I told him that we needed the names, but I haven't seen anything.
I did talk to him about that, and he said Teresa had them, and she's gonna submit them, but I took it she had.
She sent an email and said they had 7. Then she turned around and sent another email and said, no, make that 8, because another fireman came on.
They got a,
Sheriff, see if those people in the hall need to come in.
they got school in February, and I think he had about 8 members that was going to it for certification.
That's all I have.
Do we know anything about the call volume, Mr. Dalton, and since we've opened this up, how many calls are they running and how many is being answered by Wythe County?
I can get that in about 5 minutes. Email it to you. Or we can walk over there and ask, just to report together. But I do not have that cut off the cusp here.
Okay.
Mr. Dalton, I know we discussed this in Fire and Rescue about designated where either rescue squads or fire departments go do extrication. Did we bring that up to the board vote?
No.
Okay.
Fire and Rescue did make a recommendation that only fire departments do extrication.
But it hasn't been for the whole full board.
Why was that? May I ask?
Yeah, I don't mind answering it.
No.
Right now, we've got a scheduling problem, and the scheduling problem with volunteers is there's only 2 people scheduled to answer a call. Now, if you need extrication, they go to scene, then they got to call back and call for an extrication team to come from home, go get the truck, and come there. Of course, it's purely a manpower question. The firemen are trained in extrication. They fall out as a whole squad. Daytime, it may be 3, it may be 4. But in most calls, they fall out as a squad. Rescue squads don't do that. They only send ambulance driver and a paramedic. So who's going to provide the service if they have the truck? They've never provided that service. The fire departments do provide that service.
My understanding is that the Madison Fire Department didn't have 2 people on their extrication truck for the wreck on Ramsey Mountain. And I believe that the rescue squad have more people coming out for that than any.
Well, I'm sure that one instance, if it happened that way, was brought to your attention for a reason.
Yeah, but there's more than one incident. Sometimes you have 2 wrecks, one here and one there.
And we got multiple fire departments with equipment. Down there where the most of that occurs, you know that Ivanhoe's got plenty of equipment.
Ivanhoe gets to Fort Children 15 minutes. Then where you going? They got a good one. That ain't what I'm saying. Why not have it? You want to get into that discussion or not?
No, I think it ought to be done with committee, but that, you asked why the reasoning was, and it was about manpower, not who has a truck.
did tell them at that time that if they, if they had, if they had people and come in and list of people, that I would make a motion to return the crash truck. In honoring our word, I will do that when we see the names. I told Sam when I talked to him that, not the numbers, we got to know, we've got to know, who.
Well, it's just like, and Mike Ingo agreed with me, and he understood what I was saying, that, okay, you can have the names, but what if the people on that list is running rescue? I mean, they can't answer extrication calls. And he said, I understand what you're talking about. Now, we're going to have to run 2 rosters. Well, are they capable? And, I'll ask JD, are y'all capable of running 2 rosters to run an extrication truck?
We use full fire department for our extrication. They use our equipment on our trucks. But our experience is manpower is one thing, but also they have the turnout gear. The fire department has to be there anyway because they have to have a pumper on the scene. And it's a lot easier for them to get out with their turnout gear already on, already in place, and ready to do the extrication, and our people can focus on patient care.
So the fire, during extrications, the fire department has to be there and has to have a truck there.
They have to have a pumper there before they can cut a vehicle. But they're going to be there anyway and turn out gear.
What I'm saying is that if they sit in a list of names, I'll honor my word and make that as a motion and, put the board.
I think it's something that, we're going to have a, we can do in a work session and look at that when we get more information on it. Any other member have anything else to bring before the board? Hearing none, I'll declare us adjourned.